on set. Places, everybody. And action.
It's time once again for the Hooked on Movies podcast. Today, we will be reviewing a fan request. We're going to be looking at the 1993 action western release, Tombstone. With me are Ken.
Why, Ted, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
And Ted.
I'm your Huckleberry.
And I'm, of course, say when. And I'm, of course, Eric. I want your blood, and I want your soul. Both of you.
And I want them now.
Sounds like a song. Yes, and I want it now. We're talking Tombstone, one of the great westerns of all time, depending on who you talk to and what report you're looking at.
Skin your smoke wagon.
That's right. Some great lines in this one. So let's talk about the week. Ken, what's new and exciting with you this week?
Basically, reviewing this movie and figuring out what do for the research. And so I checked out the documentary on Netflix, the White and the Cowboy War, and very interesting documentary. I don't know how perfect that documentary is, but I definitely would recommend it for people to check out.
Never seen it.
Yeah, it's brand new. It's only been out maybe 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay, cool. Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, I binge watched that. I think it's 6 episodes that are about 35 to 45 minutes long on each one. And then the other thing I did was I'm still zipping through the Discovery of Witches, which is also on Netflix right now.
Cool. All right. Ted?
It's been a quiet week. I watched a few movies. I watched The Dark Knight again, probably for the 100th time, and watched The Dark Knight Rises. And I watched a stupid movie. I watched Cocktail.
No, Cocktail's not stupid.
Oh, thank you, because I do kind of enjoy it.
It's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure.
It's a stupid guilty pleasure, but except that
yeah.
stupid. The only thing I hate about that is Kokomo. I hate that Beach Boys song with a passion. Other than that, I can watch it.
When I was little,
I was just throwing up bottles and trying to make drinks and stuff like that.
That's what I was doing. And and I revisited a couple of documentaries. Revisited a documentary from a couple years ago called Relentless. It's on Max. It's about a missing girl from Hannibal, Missouri, which is 20 minutes from my hometown of Quincy. I did watch the Worst X, 3-episode thing that was on Netflix. It was pretty funny. It's all true crime. Nothing earth-shattering or groundbreaking.
How about you, Eric? What did you do this week?
It's a slow week for me. All I did was watch a little bit of more of season 2 of The Sopranos. Not as much as I wanted to. I'm still in season 2. Should be a little farther, but things are a little slower. Listen to some podcasts, but really, I didn't watch any movies this week, except Tombstone, pretty much. So it's been a pretty busy and chaotic week for me. So maybe next week it'll be a little less, but I'm not holding my breath here. I'm hoping October things will slow down a little bit.
I will add that I did watch Murderers in the Building, season 3.
Oh, the new season, season 4?
Season 4,
yeah.
Which I guess now they're already signed up for season 5, so I guess they all live at the end, so I guess that's this.
Money talks.
There. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in my queue to watch across many, many different platforms. Just time is not on my side right now. Maybe with winter when things get a little colder outside. Yeah. No, it's not. It's not. Time is not on my side right now. I'm hoping maybe in the fall and winter.
Mick Jagger saying time is on your side.
That's
yes, I know. The Stones have time on. Well, actually, the Stones don't have time on their side either.
They do.
They're in their 80s. What are you talking about?
Keith Richards.
They already lost 2 of them.
Yeah.
Keith Richards is going to outlive us all.
He could drop dead tomorrow. I know he's got formaldehyde running through his veins. Keith Richards and cockroaches will be the only,
He's
and
already been
Oreos.
embalmed. They did an embalming.
They've embalmed
earlier
him
on.
already. Yeah,
Yeah, they've already embalmed him, so he could go straight.
Yeah,
I wish I was in as good a shape as Mick Jagger is. It's crazy.
Yeah, no shit, right?
All right. So, when was the first time you gentlemen saw this movie? Ted?
Well, interesting story. The movie was released on Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm.
I was in high school, and I was manager of my high school basketball team, and we went to a Christmas tournament in Jefferson City, and on
the capital of Missouri.
The capital of Missouri, yes.
Yes.
On our one afternoon that we had off, the school that we hosted paid for all the teams to go see a movie at the hotel we were staying at. And
a movie at the hotel?
The movie theater was attached with the hotel and everything. It was really kind of cool. You had a choice to either go see Tombstone or Passenger 57 with Wesley
good
Snipes.
Choice. Oh, such a good choice. Is that the one where it's always like, I always bet on black? Is that Passenger 57?
Yes. I stupidly saw Passenger 57 rather than Tombstone in the movie theater.
Wesley
So the first time I saw Tombstone, I missed my opportunity to see it in the movie theater. But I saw it on video shortly after and just absolutely loved it from the first time I saw it.
Oh, he's already given his review away. How about you, Ken?
Yeah.
Cable?
Yes. Yeah.
What a shock. Yeah.
A lot of times on cable.
Yeah. For me, DVD rental sometime in the 90s is all I can remember. I can't pinpoint the time that I watched it. Well, what qualifies you, Ken, to review this movie?
I'm a poker player by trade.
Very nice.
I wouldn't say
Very
by trade,
well.
but yeah.
Very well done. That's awesome. How about you, Ted?
Kenny Negreanu.
That's right.
There.
Yeah, right.
I've once played for blood.
Oh, cool. I sweat a lot. So I might have tuberculosis for all I know.
Consumption.
So, yeah.
You're a lunger.
Yeah.
Ted mentioned Negreanu with poker. I forgot to mention I started my master class this week on poker with
he
Dan
teaches
Lewis.
one, yeah.
Yeah, so I started watching that. So yeah, that's something to add on to.
He teaches that he should win more often.
Give us like a 30-second review of Masterclass for people that are not part of it or are not familiar with it. It's a bunch of celebrities to get together. You pay X amount of dollars a year or a month, and you get classes that are taught, pre-recorded classes, right? That are taught online to you in different segments, right?
Exactly.
And it's big name celebs, name celebrities.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts of it so far?
I'd see why people like it and why people go to it. I mean, to be honest, could you probably go on YouTube and get somebody that could teach you the same thing? Yeah, probably so. It gives you just know that you're getting something that's done professionally.
Well, you got like Martin Scorsese teaching you directing.
Right.
It's like, okay,
Steve Martin teaching you comedy. So it's,
Really? I don't know if I would want Steve Martin teaching me comedy.
Well, if it was 1977, you would.
He's hilarious, but I know there's other stand-up comics.
He's a wild and crazy guy, Ted.
It doesn't have to be stand-up comics. I mean, he could be teaching you comedy as far as sketch comedy.
Does he do banjo lessons?
All right.
Yeah. I mean, not everything is stand-up comedy. So
yeah, I know.
There's some big names. Big names.
Big names. Like you said, Martin Scorsese. You got Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
He's out there. You got also...
teaching you how to lie.
Yeah. You got George Bush on there as well.
Teaching you how to lie.
W or HW?
Herbert, George W.
The one that's still living.
Yeah, Herbert Walker's dead. Yeah. From the grave, he's teaching classes.
Well, I didn't know if he recorded something years ago or something.
You got Nixon and LBJ doing classes. It's awesome.
Yeah.
AI
Jimi
stuff,
Hendrix,
right? Big giant holograms teaching classes. Yeah.
He had Jimi Hendrix teaching guitar.
Yeah. All right. So far, you're on board with it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if after 1 year if I'll renew it or not, but It's mainly for poker and for learning how to do better barbecue.
Well, they keep adding people to it as well. It
Oh,
just
yeah.
keeps getting bigger and bigger. So
Who knows? Maybe after all these classes, maybe I'll know how to do a podcast correctly. So
yeah, do they have one on podcast? That'd be too easy, right?
yeah, they have about speaking.
Yes,
They have
public
a podcast
speaking.
about podcasting.
That's what I'm saying. A podcast about
Podcasting.
Yeah, that would be great.
The ultimate meta podcast.
Well, speaking of podcasting, great segue. Let's tell all the folks where they can find us here. Obviously, you're listening to us now, but you can find us on hooked_on_movies on Twitter/X. And of course, Ken is head of the Facebook page for Hooked on Movies. Some great stuff there. And we'd like to give a shout out to the Dorkening Network, which apparently we're a part of. So maybe give them a listen. There's a bunch of other stuff on there as well, too, that might tickle your fancy. And any shout outs to friends or anyone out there, gentlemen?
I'll shout out to Jennifer, who is the one who recommended this movie, Tombstone. So shout out to her for this recommendation. It's something that we wanted to do anyway, so it was kind of nice that we can do this. So
rock on, man. I'm
Jennifer.
looking forward to it. How about you, Ted? Anyone?
Nope. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer. All right. Sweet. Well, Ted, why don't you tell us about the particulars of Tombstone?
Okay, so Tombstone, directed by
And you have
George...
to go through every celebrity that's in the movie.
Trust me. Buckle up.
All right. Get comfortable, everybody.
Ever.
Tombstone, directed by George P. Cosmatos, with a screenplay by Kevin Jarre. It had a running time of 130 minutes. Release date, like I said, of December 25th, 1993. Had a budget of $25 million. A box office gross of a mild $73.2 million. It had a critic score of a certified fresh 73% and an audience score of a 93%. Obviously, the audience is much more accurate than the critic score.
It's a cult favorite by now.
It has an IMDb rating of 7.8. Tombstone stars Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp, Val Kilmer, brilliant as Doc Holliday, Sam Elliott as Virgil Earp, Bill Paxton as Morgan Earp, Powers Booth eating the scenery as Curly Bill Brocious, Michael Bean as Johnny Ringo, Jason Priestley as Billy Breckenridge, John Tenney as Sheriff John Behan, the great Stephen Lang as Ike Clanton, Thomas Hayden Church as Billy Clanton, Dana Delaney as Josephine Marcus, Paula Malcolmson as Allie Earp, Lisa Collins as Louisa Earp, John Philbin as Tom McLaury, Dana Wheeler Nicholson as Maddie Blaylock, Joanna Pacula as Big Nose Kate, Michael Rooker as Sherman McMasters, Harry Carey Jr. as Marshall Fred White. He's not related to the baseball broadcaster Harry Carey.
Good to know.
Billy Bob Thornton as Johnny Tyler, Thomas Arena as Frank Stillwell, Paul Ben Victor as Florentino Indian Charlie Cruz, Frank Stallone as Ed Bailey,
Hey, yo.
Robert John Burke as Frank McLaury, Billy Zane as Mr. Fabian, John Corbett as Johnny Barnes, Buck Taylor as Turkey Creek Jack Johnson, Terry O'Quinn, prior to Lost, as mayor and publisher of the Tombstone Epitaph, John Clum, Peter Sherayko as John Texas Jack Vermillion, Wyatt Earp III as Billy Claiborne.
Any relation?
He is the third cousin of Wyatt Earp.
It's a cool name to have, isn't it?
Exactly. And then the two biggest people probably in the whole movie, Robert Mitchum stars as the narrator, and Charlton Heston as Henry Hooker. And no,
Damn you dirty cowboys.
And no, they didn't have to take his gun from his cold, dead hands.
Not yet.
But that is the cast of Tombstone. and I don't think we left anybody out.
No, I think you got everyone there.
Well, if we did, we didn't have time to include them. So sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt Damon. We didn't have time.
There are so many people who were in this movie just before they became famous.
I mean, 1993. Think of all the people in, movies, television. I mean,
yeah.
What, Jason Priestley's 90210? I mean, come on.
Jason Priestley's 90210. Thomas Hayden Church is from Wings.
Wings, yep.
It's amazing how many people that are there they're on the precipice of finding themselves into superstardom, like Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah.
And the great news is, if you didn't get a role in this movie, there was another Wired Earp movie 6 months later. So
maybe you'll get a role in that one.
Yeah. Kevin Costner decided to do that one, but not nearly as good as Tombstone.
Well, tell us about some of the production on this one, Cam. What do you got?
Well, some of the people that were going to be considered for this movie. So William Dafoe.
People were turned down?
Yes, people were turned down. Like William Dafoe was turned down because of the controversial movie, The Last Temptation of Christ.
So stupid.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Douglas was considered for the role of Doc Holliday because his dad, Kirk Douglas, played it earlier in a movie called Gunfight at the OK Corral.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you.
He would have been a little
old.
He would have been a little too old to play Doc
There's
Holliday.
a lot of people that are a little too old to be playing the parts that they're playing. But
Sam Elliott, come on, let's be honest.
Yeah.
All right,
and Harry Carey Jr. too.
Holy cow!
Yeah. The funny thing that you said about Harry Carey Jr. Because originally the character that he's playing, of course, who is Marshall Fred White, was 31 when he died.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, might as well double that number.
Harry Carey Jr. was
at least
62.
Yeah, right.
No, it was double. He was 62.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Funny thing is,
he looks a lot older.
He does.
His dad, Harry Carey, who was a big Western star back in the early days, knew Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp actually would be on the set on some of those early movies back in the day. So
crafting his legend.
Yep. Jeremy Irons was also considered for the role of Doc Holliday as well.
Ooh, that would have been interesting, but
would have been creepy.
Nobody did it like Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
No. For Johnny Ringo, Ricky Rourke was considered for Ringo.
I can see that.
So
That's
interesting.
I see that.
That is really interesting.
He turned it down, though. He was offered it, but he turned it down.
That's stupid on his
Wasn't
part.
big enough for him, probably?
I guess not. Jennifer Connelly was she auditioned for Josephine Marcus.
So
young
Jennifer Connelly.
At that time, though,
yeah.
Wouldn't she have been? Because
She
Dana Delaney's
about 22, 23 at that time.
Yeah, that would
Probably
have been a
accurate.
little awkward with Kurt Russell being because Kurt Russell at that time was probably in his 40s, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, at least.
Yeah.
Well, no, that would make him 80 now. So he was probably in his 30s. Well, it
I'm
might
sure
not have
Kurt
been.
Russell is pushing 70s.
Yeah, well, yeah, because Goldie Hawn is. I know that for a fact.
Oh, yeah. He's up there, yeah.
So, yeah, he's up there, but with that mustache, he looks older, and it would have been really awkward with Jennifer Connelly rather than Dana Delaney. Who, we talk about TV stars. What was the Vietnam TV show?
China Beach.
China Beach.
There we go. She was incredible in China Beach.
She was. She was incredibly hot.
I was talking about her acting, but we could go that direction too.
Yeah.
I just think it's
sexist pig. So
anyway,
yeah.
I think it's Kevin Jarre or Jari. He wrote this film. He started to direct this film. He got replaced, but originally he wanted David Bowie for the role of Doc Holliday.
No.
With an English accent?
Yeah, no. That's no way. No.
No,
sorry.
He also wanted to consider Timothy Hutton for the role of for the sheriff John Behan.
That's okay.
Timothy Hutton, I can see that.
As much as I adore David Bowie, no.
And Tommy Lee Jones for the role of
He could have been the Billy Zane character.
Yes.
Easily.
Could you see Tommy Lee Jones as Curly Bill?
Yes.
Why not? He's in everything else in this era.
Yes.
Sure. Why the hell not?
Yes. But Powers Booth is amazing.
The one that campaigned, I mean, he stood outside the director's house probably and had picket signs and everything, was
holding
Richard
up his
Gere.
Say Anything sign.
Richard Gere wanted to be Wyatt.
Oh, Richard Gere.
Nope. Nope.
Robert Mitchum, we talked about him earlier. He's
Yes.
the narrator, but he was
Narrator.
supposed to be Old Man Clayton.
Yes.
But before shooting started, he fell off his horse and injured his back.
Yeah.
And they actually considered to replace him with Telly Savalas.
Okay, I love Telly
Interesting.
Savalas. Who loves you, baby?
I love Telly Savalas in The Dirty Dozen.
I love Telly Savalas for the Players Club commercials he did in the 80s. Reno, Lake Tahoe, the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Before they got Harry Carey Jr. to do Marshall White, Glenn Ford was supposed to be.
Ooh,
Yeah, I
Glenn
read
Ford.
that,
That'd be
yeah.
a great nod. Yeah.
Great nod to the past, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They also wanted to have Jack Palance and we talked about earlier, Kirk Douglas do cameos in this film, but they didn't do it.
Jack Palance would have been great.
When was City Slickers? Was that about this time?
I want to say mid-90s.
Yeah,
mid-90s? Okay. Because we all know City Slickers brought that guy back from the grave, literally.
Oh, yeah.
So
and he won an Academy Award.
Yeah.
He did one-handed push-up on the stage.
Right.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. But
City Slickers is 1991.
Oh, so it's a couple years before. Okay.
All of these actors, what do they all have in common?
They're dead.
They're all better than John Wayne in being in a Western.
Oh,
even the ones who didn't star in the
that
Western.
one back? How long have you been holding that one back?
Actually said that most of the inspiration came from John Wayne movies.
Oh, fuck off.
Wow.
No, I'm being serious about that.
Yeah, fuck.
Red River was one of the big movies that they were considering.
Nobody's inspired by John Wayne.
I want to do John Wayne movies now so badly.
Nobody has ever been inspired by John Wayne.
Oh, I find that one hard to believe, Ted.
Yeah.
I think you're in the minority.
It's a little bias right there.
The greatest Western star of all time,
Clint Eastwood,
will remain with Clint Eastwood. Hands down, nobody even in consideration.
Depends on who you talk to. I know some people that
but I would argue that Clint Eastwood would probably say John Wayne had a little influence on his career, probably too.
I doubt it. He probably wouldn't because he's been talking to empty chairs for a while. So
I'm pretty sure that anyone who's in a Western in the 60s and 70s would have to give some type of an accolade to John Wayne. Sorry, Ted, but I think it kind of goes that way.
No, wrong.
So we're going to move on, because there's only so much time.
Yeah, this isn't an anti-John Wayne.
Yes, it is. It is. It's anti-John Wayne.
I actually had stuff about John Wayne to talk about in this, but I pulled it out because I was afraid this was going to happen.
So look at that. You predicted the future.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Look at that.
All right. So should we go to the setup here?
Nope, I still got some more information to share with you about this
you got some production stuff to talk about?
I got some more production stuff.
Let's do it, man.
So originally, the person who wrote this movie, Kevin Jarre, or however you pronounce his name.
Jar Jar Binks.
He was going to be directing this. In fact, he directed the scenes with Charlton Heston.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he fell behind, so they had to fire him, and so they had to bring on George. And George, he was given like a couple days' notice, so there was a lot of Kurt Russell doing things, setting things up, making things happen.
A little bit of Kurt Russell influence there.
Val Kilmer.
He probably did 90% of directing this movie.
Yeah, Val Kilmer wrote that Kurt Russell really directed the movie.
In fact, Kurt Russell has actually confirmed that in a 2006 interview, 2006-2007. There was actually people wanting to walk off this picture because of the replacement of the director. They didn't like George. Michael Bayham wanted off.
Because of the way that George treated the people, the set people and everything and extras. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he also was friends with the original director, too, so I think that had something to do with it as well. Kurt Russell named his son Wyatt Russell after Wyatt Earp.
So. That's right. I forgot about that. How about it? Yeah.
Which he did that in 1988, so that's even before this movie even came out.
That's a good point.
Guess who really wanted to play Wyatt, huh? So,
yeah, right. Foreshadowing.
So that's some little production notes that I have. Most of it was filmed on location, but of course, you're always going to go back to Hollywood for some other stuff.
A lot of it filmed in Arizona, right?
They actually had them wear the attire of the day for it to be more authentic.
Yeah, Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer wrote in his.
He was really sweaty.
His autobiography that when they did the scenes inside the Birdcage Theater, the thermometer inside the theater read 134 degrees. Yeah,
134.
yeah,
It's a little
and he
hot.
said everybody was miserable.
Hell, I would have walked off at 134.
So basically, his sweating there in that scene is legit.
Yeah.
All right, Eric, let's go to the setup.
In 1879, members of the outlaw gang known to wear red sashes called the Cowboys, led by Curly Bill Brocius, ride into a Mexican town and interrupt a local police officer's wedding. They then proceed to massacre the assembled policemen in retribution for killing 2 of their fellow gang members. Shortly before being shot, a local priest warns them that their acts of murder and savagery will be avenged, referencing the biblical 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Wyatt Earp, a retired peace officer with a notable reputation, reunites with his brothers Virgil and Morgan in Tucson, Arizona, where they venture on towards Tombstone to settle down. There, they encounter Wyatt's longtime friend, Doc Holliday, who is seeking relief in the dry climate from his worsening tuberculosis. Josephine Marcus and Mr. Fabian are also newly arrived with a traveling theater troupe. Meanwhile, Wyatt's common-law wife, Maddie Blaylock, is becoming dependent on laudanum. That's a nasty drug. Wyatt and his brothers begin to profit from a stake in a gambling emporium and saloon when they have their first encounter with the Cowboys. Dun, dun, dun. So,
This has one of the best beginnings.
it is. It's a very cool beginning.
It sets up everything perfectly. I love the fact that they did
And everyone
it
comes to him and tries to make him a sheriff. He's like, not interested. Sorry. Thank
well,
you.
no, I the very beginning, I love how it's shot like a Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Like you're watching an old Nickelodeon.
Exactly. It's kind of like Butch Cassidy.
Yes.
To set up a Butch Cassidy.
Yes, exactly. And I love the fact that it ends with the cowboy pointing the gun at the screen, which is the last scene of the great train robbery.
Yeah.
The silent movie.
They don't even know who that guy is.
The legend, I guess, says is that he was a real outlaw.
It reminds me of the Time Life series. You ever see
A little
that?
bit, yeah, I can see that.
The westerns, that's what the beginning here of all that reminds me of.
Robert Mitchum doing the narration over it. He brings a certain gravitas to that narration, and you really you learn so much. It sets the movie up perfectly. You couldn't have asked for a better setup to a movie. He tells you everything that you need to know right there, and then it comes into the Cowboys having went down into Mexico and the destroying the wedding party of the Mexican police officer.
Which I didn't know they were Mexican police officers until I did the research.
They say that they're, what do they call them? They call them federales.
Okay, I must have missed that. I know they said you killed 2 cowboys.
There's no doubt after the first 10 minutes of the movie who the bad guys are. These are guys that are not to be trifled with. Johnny Ringo sets himself up perfectly as intelligent and deadly. He shoots that priest right between the eyes.
Yeah, you don't even care.
He doesn't even flinch.
Yeah.
And it's frightening. It's frightening at how easily these guys kill. There's not going to be any more bad guys. These are the bad guys.
Cool thing about this first original part here is it really did happen. And in fact, one of the cowboys that was killed was Ike's father. So,
really?
Yeah. So this beginning is already a revenge type of killing. For if it was 2 ordinary cowboys, maybe this doesn't happen. But because it's Ike's father, I think is a big reason why this probably happens.
Well, and then that brings up one of the biggest changes that the movie makes from real life. Ike was the real godfather of the Cowboys. He was the man that drove the Cowboys. He was the gang leader. It wasn't Curly Bill Brocius.
No, unfortunately it wasn't Curly Bill, even though it's fun to see Curly Bill. And also It wasn't Ringo either. Ringo wasn't even that of an
Big,
important person
yeah.
in the Cowboys. So there's a lot of differences, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But hey, this is a movie, so we're going to enjoy the movie,
We're
right?
not going to let facts get in the way of a good movie.
We're going to talk about the facts. We're going to have some fun with it. But yeah,
Powers Booth chews the scenery like nobody else. He's a great villain.
Almost everybody is chewing scenery in this movie.
There's scene chewing all over this movie. It's so great. There's no screen left to be chewed after these guys get done. It's the contrast is so drastic from what the massacre that we just witnessed to Wyatt getting off in Tucson and meeting up with Virgil and Morgan. Yeah, sorry, brain fart. Yeah, I mean, and it's so wholesome. And the music even changes because when the Cowboys are riding up, it's that low rumble. And the music changes to more of a soothing thing when they pull into Tucson. It's great movie making.
It's music about like hope. They're starting fresh, so the music is switching over. Where, like you said, where you're going from this killed a bunch of people at a wedding, and they just killed the bride as well, and they maybe raped her really quick.
They were raping her. Yes,
it's a great start. What I like about, because they're in Tucson there, when they get off the train and stuff, you got the guy who's hitting the horse, and White comes over and hits him with the whip. The guy who was whipping the horse, and I'm thinking, this is how they're going to set up Wyatt's character right off the bat. They want to show you that Wyatt is a take charge, no nonsense type of guy.
Yep.
I like that. That's what they're going to do. But then they show him that he's also dedicated to his brothers and somewhat dedicated to his wife. Fun fact about their wives is all their wives were prostitutes.
Yeah, because Morgan asks Virgil, I wonder where he found her. And Virgil says, probably in the same place we found ours. And knowing the fact that they were all prostitutes or ladies in the houses of ill repute in the Old West, yeah, makes that kind of funny. One of the things that Eric you brought up was that everybody keeps coming up to Wyatt asking him to be
a lawman again.
To be a lawman.
Yeah.
He wasn't the most famous lawman to come out of Dodge City, because he was a lawman alongside Bat Masterson, who is another legendary Old West figure. Here's one of those little things that they changed too. Nobody came up to Wyatt asking him to be a lawman, because his reputation was, we'll put it kindly, less than admirable.
Ah.
Yes.
Hey, going back
same with Virgil and Morgan, if we're being honest.
Going back to the wives, Maddie, of course, we were talking about her, drug dependency. From what I was reading, Wyatt was actually her pimp back in before they got to,
when they were in Kansas City, right? When they were in Missouri.
Owned the house. He owned the house. You talk about laudanum. When my dad, before he passed away, he was in the hospital once, and the guy in the bed next to him was actually being given laudanum. Because my dad told me that, I'm like, you're joking, right?
Well, it's different than it was back then.
Was he on hospice?
Liquid opium?
Was he on hospice?
No, he was just in the bed next to my dad.
They changed the ingredients though over the last 80 years or so.
How could they change it? It's opium.
I was reading about it. I mean, I didn't think it was that important for me to go into details, because there was something that was toxic in the ingredients, and they had to change out the toxicity. You're not going to give somebody something that's going to be.
There was probably silver nitrate or something in the original laudums that was toxic. Yeah, if it was anything, it was probably silver nitrate.
Because you could get it over the counter, of course, back in the 1800s. Actually, as late as 1940s, I believe.
Cocaine was in Coca-Cola.
Woohoo!
They say that's one of the reasons that the original recipe for Coca-Cola is locked in that vault.
It's so
Atlanta.
addictive.
By the way, I tried the new the new Coke Zero Oreo flavored.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness!
I'm sorry.
Oreo flavor.
It's okay. It tastes like vanilla Coke. That's what it tastes like. It's not bad. It's just not. I would rather not try it. But now, also, what we don't get here is there were 5 brothers that actually came.
Yeah,
to Tombstone.
exactly. Yeah,
we only get to see 3, and there's only the 3 at the actual gunfight. The other 2, one was I think having like some type of meal, and the other one was out of town. But we don't see them at all in this movie. So there's so many things that come and go out of this movie. But in general, this movie, like I said, is a movie, so we should just enjoy the facts, right?
Right.
But I would also say that why he wasn't against being a sheriff, marshal, whatever. like they do this in this movie. It's like for the first third of the movie, he's denying that he wants to be anything like that. In fact, him and his brother Virgil actually a marshal right off the bat, and Wyatt was actually tried to. You get elected a sheriff. But him and Behem were actually going against each other for the sheriff position, and Behem actually told him, "Hey, I will share half and half with you if you let me win," and he went against his word. And so in real life, that kind of set those two people apart. So in the movie, we see them getting along, and he's like, "Hey, I got this land for you. I could do this."
Well,
for
he
you.
gets along with him at first, but he's crooked. He's crooked as all get out.
But in real life, he was at first, but then when BM went against him and didn't give him the money, and then hired somebody else as his like successor, that's where it got weird. And the one thing that is really not in this movie so much, this is a political situation too. We'll talk a little bit more about that as the movie goes on. But you had Republicans and Democrats. This is right after the Civil War.
So it almost caused the Civil War to start up again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how they come into town. And I mean, you have Val Kilmer, who actually, when they try to introduce him to BM, Val Kilmer tells Wyatt, F off, basically, because he knows what kind of character BM is.
Our introduction to Doc Holliday is amazing, to him and Big Nose Kate. He's perfect. If there's one person who came out of this movie greater than when they went in, it's Val Kilmer. Because he's truly brilliant in this movie.
I can't picture anyone else in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I just love the way he
chooses the scenery.
He oozes that gambler, gunfighter persona just perfectly, because that's who Doc was. And I love the fact too that Val Kilmer uses that southern
drawl,
aristocrat type of a drawl that just adds so much, and you can really get it when he's say when. It's like it's so great. It's
almost like Foghorn Leghorn. I say.
Yeah, say when. And
I wouldn't say he's embodies Doc Holliday, but he makes his own Doc Holliday, because the real Doc Holliday, first of all, was a dentist.
He was a dentist, right? He was a real life dentist.
He was more of a gambler than anything. So if anything, he was a gambler. He actually,
but he was also noted. He was also noted as being extremely, extremely good with a 6-shooter.
They said he was fast. He was fast, but they also say that he didn't kill that many men.
He's not Wild Bill Hickok. I mean, who was the fastest gun in the West.
But right here at this table, we see him, sticking the guy with a knife. I mean, I don't know if he kills him. We don't really know if he's dead. I would assume that he's dead. So they make him seem like he's a killer that can kill at any time.
He's violent.
Was the real Doc Holliday violent? I guess he could be, because he drank a lot. He was a heavy drinker, because he was told for his tuberculosis that in order to take care of that, alcohol would soothe.
Pickle yourself.
Yeah.
So essentially,
So basically, he drank himself as medication.
To death, essentially.
Yeah, basically he did. Truly, he could have probably lived longer in life if he took it easy, but gambling and the drinking, that just sped everything up.
I don't know, did we get as far as the introduction into Billy Bob Thornton's character? where Wyatt takes control, 25% control of the Oriental.
That also happened in real life too, but it happened later. It didn't happen right when they came in. It happened a couple years after they showed up.
The Oriental still stands in Tombstone. One of the Ghost Adventures episodes, they went into the Oriental and they did a ghost hunt there. The same with the Birdcage Theater. It's fascinating. Billy Bob Thornton's character comes back out and doesn't know who Wyatt Earp is,
Right.
But Doc stops him. Well, Johnny Tyler. It's so great. He stops Billy Bob Thornton's character right in his tracks.
Yeah.
Because he knows that he's dealing with Doc Holliday.
Well, he also realizes it's Wyatt Earp, and again, as you said earlier, Wyatt Earp is not as well known as they're letting on to be. Everybody,
right.
Everybody's treating Wyatt Earp like he's like
God,
like John Wayne.
No,
John Wayne?
No. Absolutely anyway. Not.
But I mean, because every chance you get here, it seems like if you hear his name, even the bartender in the Oriental is like doesn't believe him when he says Wyatt Earp. He's like,
right.
He's like, right, sure, whatever. So
his legend.
He didn't have a legend until Wyatt, after he died.
We'll talk about it as at the very end. But he did a magnificent job in curating his legend.
He was obsessed with his legend.
Yes,
you're talking Doc Holliday or Wyatt Earp?
Wyatt Earp.
Yeah,
because I truly believed the first time I saw Tombstone, and when I was a kid, Wyatt Earp was larger than life. There was Paul Bunyan and Wyatt Earp. That's just how I looked at it. And to find out that, that
there's more to it.
Right, there's a lot more to it. He wasn't even that famous in real life. It's like, okay, wow. The true facts aside, it's just a great way to set up a movie. Because you know who your good guys are, you know who your bad guys are, and there's one guy that kind of hovers in the middle that sides with the good guys. And of course, he's the coolest character of all.
There are some messed ups here a little bit. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the characters. The love interest, Billy Zane. He's not the love interest, but I'm adding that on to these. He
is of Jason Priestley's character.
I mean, so these characters just, I feel like don't add anything to. They're supposed to, but I just don't feel like they add anything to the movie.
I disagree.
You could take out their whole characters, and it wouldn't make a difference.
Which characters are you talking about?
He's talking about Dana Delaney's character, Josephine, and Billy Zane's character.
I'm not sure if I forget the name of the actor.
I think, Ken, you would probably have enjoyed it more if they would have made more of a character out of Maddie Blaylock, where it would have been more of a conflict for Wyatt. If
with Maddie a little bit.
Yeah, but Maddie is not a good character. She's an opium addict. You can tell that she's not attentive at all. She adds enough of a buffer from the violence, and there needs to be a slight palate cleanser a little bit along the way.
I guess so, but I think I would rather have what really happened with Josephine and Wyatt. Josephine actually was with BM for a few years. She didn't just get off the stage. In real life, she had been there for years, and Wyatt actually was having a secret affair with her on the side. That is more interesting than them riding horses and having a picnic. These
True.
things are
it makes him out to be the cheater. And he did cheat on Maddie, and she cheated on Behan.
4 wives, actually.
And back then, yes, she would have been technically in Tombstone for that period of time, but she also would have been traveling with a troupe as well, kind of like what you see. That's pretty accurate. But Tombstone might have been their home station, but they would have been traveling around the different.
I don't know if she was that much of an actress. She might have just been local into that theater. I don't know if she actually was in a troupe or not. The movie kind of makes it seem like that's the case, but
I thought they were in a troupe.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but I think the movie is just pushing that on. Where, like I said, she had been there for years, and she actually stayed there in the real life up until when he sends his brother back to California after he gets shot up. Dana Delaney is nice to look at, and she's, very pretty. And when I watch this movie, in the past, I feel like I've been highly critical of her, and I don't think she's that bad in this movie at all. I just feel like they just make her character just blah kind of. I mean, she's supposed to be this like wildfire. I think that it doesn't come off that way, to be honest with you.
Kind of like more eye candy. Yeah.
It's like what Ted just said. We need something to kind of cleanse the palate.
She's interchangeable with anyone else of the time.
I think so, and they use her too much. She's in and out. After the gunfight, she's there. After his brother dies, she's there. Every time something happens, she's there. I mean, I don't need her to be there every freaking time something happens. Nothing against Billy Zane, actually. His speech that he gives in the theater, that's good. I mean, I think it's funny to watch them shooting. I see that. I know this guy. He throws things. Oh, he catches things. Oh, catch this, and they start shooting at them, and that's something that actually truly happened in real theater. There were cowboys and would come into these theaters, and they would shoot their guns off. That really truly happened.
Well, what's interesting when you say cowboys, they say the cowboys are the bad guys because they wear the red sashes. The term cowboy was a slur. It was never supposed to be cowboys and Indians type of a thing, where the cowboys are the good guys. Cowboys, up until the John Ford movies, cowboys were not good guys.
Depends on how you looked at it, though.
They were considered the bad guys.
Again, that's the political thing. If you were on one side, they were the bad guys. If you were on the other side, they were good guys.
They were cattle rustlers, bank robbers. Like Jesse James was a cowboy. Okay, Billy the Kid was a cowboy. Let's call a spade a spade.
This is still being all settled. They haven't been there for a very long time.
But it wasn't until the late 40s, early 50s, and into the early 60s, the fairy tale making of what a cowboy was.
The persona.
Which is another reason why John Wayne's whole career is nothing but a fake and a fallacy. It's that whole myth making that the cowboys are always the good guys. When in fact, in real life, if somebody called you a cowboy, that was, I'm pulling my gun and shooting you.
But I enjoyed the theater. I think that's
it's cool.
It's a fun little thing. You get to see a little bit more of the personalities of the bad guys, and the good thing about the good guys is you see that they're a little bit more complex. They're not the straight good guy here. You find out that White is interested in Josephine, and I love when Doc is like, "I'll be damned." Yeah.
But the best here is when Curly Bill looks at Johnny Ringo and he's talking about making a deal with the devil, and Johnny Ringo looks and he said, "I already did." The way he says that, is so cold. It's amazingly great.
Guys, it's pure evil, isn't he?
I love Curly Bill's reactions to whatever Ringo says.
The look on Powers Booth's face is amazing when Michael Biehn issues that line. You can even feel that he feels, holy shit, this guy's evil.
Like Curly Bill has a limit, whereas Ringo, he doesn't have any morals whatsoever.
Right.
The only moral that it seems like that he has is the cowboys are his family, and if you mess with them, he's going to come after you. Outside of that, he doesn't care.
He's a stone cold killer, and what you just brought up is essentially what Doc tells Wyatt at Charlton Heston's farm about why Wyatt can't beat Johnny Ringo. Let's get to more of the meat on the bone
meat and
here.
Bones of this one?
Yeah. We're going to get to the good stuff now.
Gentlemen, as tensions rise, Wyatt is pressured to help rid the town of the cowboys. After a visit to an opium den, Curly Bill begins shooting erratically in the street. Marshal Fred White attempts to disarm him, only to be shot dead. Wyatt takes Curly Bill into custody, fending off both the mob attempting to lynch the cowboy and a handful of the brethren seeking to free him. Curly Bill stands trial but is found not guilty due to a lack of a witness.
By Judge Spicer.
Yes, Judge Spicer.
I'll give you a little anecdote about him in a little while.
Virgil, unable to tolerate the chaos, becomes the new marshal and imposes a weapons ban within the city limits. This leads to the gunfight at the OK Corral, in which Billy Clanton and the McLaury brothers are killed. Virgil and Morgan are wounded, and the allegiance of County Sheriff Johnny Bean with the Cowboys is made clear. In retaliation for the Cowboys' death, Wyatt brothers are ambushed. Morgan is killed while Virgil is left handicapped.
I don't even know where to start here. I'll give you my anecdote about Judge Spicer. He was called the Hangman's Judge because all of the famous tombstones that everybody makes fun of and like Warner the Looney Tunes cartoons had of like, here lies blah blah blah, he was shot by a 44 blah blah blah. A lot of those men, Judge Spicer was the one who sent them to the hangman's noose. He was considered the hangman and as corrupt as the day is long. Judge Spicer was not a good man. Well, he's the reason that Boot Hill has its name, Boot Hill. As far as this movie goes, this is just great. It doesn't over-immortalize the gunfight at the OK Corral. It is what it is. I love when Wyatt says, there'll be a lot less itchy with Doc on the street howitzer, meaning that Doc's going to have the double-barrel shotgun. It's the little things like that just add so much color to this movie that makes it so good.
I like how they build up the tension at the beginning at the Oriental.
Mm-hmm.
The Cowboys realize who Wyatt Earp is because, again, we have to tout that Wyatt Earp has a reputation. And of course
he does.
And Ike's like, we don't want no law here.
Law dog. I heard you the first time.
We were talking about earlier about the Ike character. So Stephen Lang, so the director of this film said that Stephen Lang was drunk the whole time this movie was made, which is interesting because his character looks like he's drunk the whole time.
Right, because Stephen Lang is kind of method. He's not crazy like Daniel Day-Lewis, but he's kind of method that way. One of my teachers in college was on the set of Gettysburg, and Stephen Lang plays George Pickett. If you saw Stephen Lang on set, you had to refer to him as George Pickett. He wouldn't answer to
So he is
name.
like Daniel Day-Lewis, kind of.
A little bit,
yeah.
The fact that it said that Stephen was drunk all the time, because that's how they wanted this portrayal of Ike Clanton to be. And he also, in Gods and Generals, he played Stonewall Jackson, which he does an amazing job of that in that movie, too, even though the movie's not that good.
You have Ringo and Doc going back and forth talking in Latin, which is great for the film. I hate to burst people's bubbles, but Ringo actually was a dropout. He didn't go to school. He doesn't know Latin.
Stop it.
Sorry.
But I find that hard to believe.
It is good for the movie. And actually, I found the translation for what they were saying, but I'm not going to go into the translation.
Well, in Vino Veritas, it's a famous Latin phrase. It's about drinking. Michael Bihn's, his gun work, it's awesome. And the fact that then Val Kilmer does it with his shot glass, it's just great. There's just no other way to put it. 4 or 5 scenes later, you see how educated Doc is. He's playing a nocturne by Chopin on the piano. And then you know Stephen fucking Foster. It's like
also
Hamptown Races.
Tuberculosis.
Exactly.
Well.
Yes. And because, of course, Stephen Foster's Camptown Races and a bunch of other famous drinking songs from the Old West. You see how Doc antagonizes the Cowboys. He doesn't take their shit, whereas everybody else kind of does. When, Eric, you were saying that there was a group of people who wanted to hang Curly Bill, they might have wanted to,
but they wouldn't have.
But they would never have done it.
Because the retribution would have been crazy.
Yes. They would have burned Tombstone to the ground.
A fun fact about that one, Fred White didn't die originally right away. In fact,
he actually told Judge Spicer that that it was an accident.
That he thought it was an accident.
So,
boo.
Well, it's funny you say that because when he was handing them the guns, his reaction after he shot him, you almost saw a little bit of, oh my goodness, I shot him. I kind of saw that in the actor. So I could see that.
Yeah,
I could see how he might have thought that, he accidentally shot
But the
me.
way they do it in the movie also is they show him moving the gun himself. And
that's an actual
But he was also
move.
high as a kite, too. I mean,
it makes you wonder what it's like to smoke opium.
I noticed the reaction afterwards. I thought I saw, maybe I didn't, a little bit of remorse. Yeah, I saw a woody cat.
There's also to believe that maybe it wasn't opium, that he was just drunk in real life. There was nothing in the records to show that he was high as a kite. I know. Debbie Downer, we like to see him high as a kite, right?
Boo.
Shooting at the moon.
Howling at the moon? Yeah.
Well, he was shooting and howling at the moon. I think the moon won. But yes, you're right. I mean, because everybody else is kind of like, let the Cowboys do what they want, which is interesting that BM comes in and says somebody has to do something about what's going on outside, even though BM is with the Cowboys.
Right.
So why he comes in and says somebody has to do something about what's going on almost seems like a setup. It almost seems like he wants White to get killed.
You're exactly right. Because movie-wise, he knows that Wyatt has a thing for Josephine. And she's with him. And so he's definitely with the Cowboys, and he wants Wyatt out of the way. So he's going to set him up and tell him to go up there and do something about it. And because Sam Elliott is so cool, he has to play the goody-goody guy. And he's like, well, it's because Wyatt says it's a misdemeanor. He goes, it doesn't matter. Well, all right. I love the music as they walk up. It's the four of them. And I love the way, too, that this movie breaks the old rules a lot, too. Whereas the good guys are supposed to wear white hats and the bad guys are supposed to wear black hats. All four of these guys are dressed in black.
Bunch of Johnny Cash is walking up there.
Right. They're dressed in black. They're coming. And this movie is actually more accurate than anything that's been put on film about the gunfight at the OK Corral. Because in reality, they were like 6 feet apart. And it was a confined area like you can't even believe. It's like an alley almost that they were fighting in. When you actually take a look at what in real life, because it's still there in Tombstone, when you see the pictures in real life of how close everybody would have been, it's shocking that there was people that walked away. That they all should have been dead. And it literally lasted 30 seconds. There were 30 shots fired in 30 seconds. The fact that Doc and Wyatt walked away unscathed is a miracle. They say that when Wyatt opened his coat, there were bullet holes in his coat. The whole wink by Val Kilmer was improvised. The whole reaction from Thomas Hayden Church and everything is just great. And Kurt Russell going, oh my God, that's awesome.
Great theater.
It is. It's great theater. And they say, too, that Val Kilmer's whistling as they're starting to walk up down the road to the corral. They say that was real. That in real life, Doc did that.
Well, if there's anybody that probably wanted to kill the Cowboys for whatever reason, it was Doc Holliday. Holliday was the one that shot first.
He was all for it. He was all game. And that's the other thing, too. I love Val Kilmer, his portrayal when Wyatt Earp says to him, this isn't your fight. And Doc looks at him and says, how dare you? I just love that. I love because then you know how dedicated Doc is to Wyatt.
That was a good line. He's like, how dare you?
And the reason why they dedicate to each other is back in
Dodge
City, Doc saved Wyatt's life. Wyatt was outside. There was these gunmen, and there was a guy who was about ready to shoot him in the back, and Doc saved his life. But Doc is also somebody that could get you into trouble, just like we just talked about how he eggs people on. I mean, we didn't talk a lot about the introduction to Doc, in that saloon, about how he egged on the other guy, he was saying stuff like,
Oops.
"If you weren't my friend, I don't know how I would live."
I could.
It's like,
I could. I don't think I could bet.
yeah, it's it's those type of insults. It's like a compliment, but it's like a backhanded compliment. He's of course trying to goat you into doing something bad, and that's what he does here. It's interesting because afterwards, in real life, you had, Ike say that we were unarmed. They came down, they tried to kill us and stuff like that. And it's like, wait a second, 2 of the Earps got hurt. And actually, Doc Holliday did get hit a little bit, but it wasn't anything serious. But it was something that Doc Holliday said in the interview when he was in jail, that it was a pain in the butt for a little bit. It's very interesting because there's an interview out there when Doc gets arrested down the road, but gets out thanks to Bat Masterson. Yeah, and so he got him off those charges. But this is great because a lot of things that happen here is true. Like, okay, you got Virgil who actually says, "Put down the guns. This is not what I want." This is actual lines that actually came out. "You'd be a daisy if you do." That actually was said. All these lines that are being said back and forth. Even when one of the cowboys says,
"I got you, you son of a bitch,"
that was actually a line that actually happened. There's some really cool things about this movie about when they are using facts, it works so well. Here's the thing: if Kurt Russell is 90% directing this film, why isn't he directing some other movies? Because this stuff is really, really good.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
You can't do this scene any better as far as the killing that happens and everything. It's a 30-second fight, and the scene lasts about 30 seconds, and it works exactly the way it probably did, back in the past. You got Ike, who's like, "I don't have a gun," and Wyatt's like, "Get out of the way."
Throws him out of the way, yeah, and that actually happened, and he actually did break into the photography place that was next door.
And depending on what account you go with, because there's some different accounts. There's some different accounts here. So after this, in real life, the Earps were charged with murder.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they got off the murder charge because of the Ike situation, because they spared Ike's life. If they were there to kill all the cowboys, they would have let Ike go, especially if Ike's the one that, has started everything. The other thing was that they got off on a technicality because BM said one thing and they found out that he was lying. Whereas there's another account that BM actually was at the scene and told him that he disarmed them. So there's that account as well. So depending on which account you go with, I'm curious on why that one building was on fire when they're walking down.
Because it's off. Well, you figure that the cowboys burned it. And, I mean, it's just another excuse for them to go down and disarm them. It adds cool ambiance.
You guys know that most of Tombstone was burned to the ground?
Oh, yeah. Well, all of the Old West towns were burned to the ground because they were all built of wood.
They think that Ike might have burned it down to the ground.
Probably did, yeah.
But I even love when it's all said and done and they're taking Morgan away to get stitched up and Behan comes up to him and says he's going to arrest them. And Wyatt says, "I don't think I'm going to allow you to arrest us today."
Right.
And they just walk away so fucking cool. It's just like a couple of badasses. You know the retribution's coming, but you don't really know how. And then Behan spills the beans to Josephine, and she tells the ladies, and before they their house gets shot.
That was unneeded. That was a one.
I think it's it sets up the fact that Michael Rooker's character changes sides, which he might have actually been an undercover marshal. But
that's one thing I've heard too.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. But anyway, they don't know if that's true or not.
Might have got killed later on because they realized he.
Yeah, they don't know if any of it's true or not. I love the way that they have it set up, where Virgil stumbles back in to the Oriental. And then Morgan playing billiards, and he gets shot and killed.
Which truly doesn't happen on the same night.
No,
that happens a couple of months later.
but for the sake of time, I mean, it is
Oh,
we
yeah, for
are
the
at
movie.
130 minutes,
Yeah, you got to kind of
So-
push everything together, right? It's
so
Hollywood.
it gets condensed.
Because actually, Wyatt was there with him when he got shot.
Right,
In fact,
right. In
the idea
reality,
was that both of them were going to be taken out, but they were only able to get Morgan, and the bullet that tried to get Wyatt missed. Barely missed.
Yeah. Here's the crazy thing that I didn't realize until I read about it. So Wyatt has Morgan's blood on his hands,
A lot of it.
and but when he goes to try to wipe it off, it won't come off
It's like
until he's
stained.
out until he's out in the right
Yeah.
until he's out in the rain, and the rain washes him clean. I didn't never notice that until it was mentioned in something that I read. I thought that was a really interesting little note. And of course, he sees his two loves. That this just kind of. I know Ken hates that, but it is what it is. He kind of blows both of them off. And
You didn't like that, Ken?
No, he hates it.
Yeah.
I don't
He doesn't
mind
even need
it,
to.
but it's all the time though. She shows up at every single event that seems to happen.
That's true, right?
Up until
Right.
the train leaves.
You bring up one of my other favorite scenes, and I keep saying it because it's so freaking cool. The Earps are riding out, and Wyatt stops for Curly Bill. He says, "I just want to let you know it's over." And Curly Bill does the best. It's just awesome.
It's bye-bye.
And he goes, "Well, bye."
Yeah.
That has turned into one of the biggest memes of all time.
It is. It's absolutely great. But then Johnny Ringo tops him. He goes above him and says, "It smells like somebody died." And Powers Booth's reaction to what he says there, it's like he didn't know that the line was coming.
Yeah.
Because he's just like, I can't believe you just fucking said that to them. We also skipped where Johnny Ringo's coming down Main Street, and he's drunk as a skunk, and he wants to play for blood. And that's where we get, well, I'm your Huckleberry.
Right.
Because Wyatt doesn't want to play him for blood. And then that was the line that you used earlier to start to show off, Eric.
Yeah.
I want your soul and everything.
Want your
It's
blood
that's
and I want your soul. Want it all.
Right. That's a great scene too.
Yeah.
I like the scene also because they're showing off their dead, and they're showing them that they were murdered by the Earps.
Yeah.
Which really
happened.
Which happened. Well, what they did was they actually put all three on display.
Yes.
I've seen the photo.
Well,
it's creepy.
You can see, because you can see them when they're carrying them down. That's like a famous Old West thing.
Yeah.
When they wanted to make a statement, they would do you all up like that and have that glass fronted casket thing. That's creepy as shit. They wanted to make a statement that they were murdered. Yeah, oh yeah. That's something. That's real. That's real life too. It's like some of those old tintypes from another horror movie, The Others. They do those old tintypes. Have you ever held one of those old tintypes?
I have.
Yeah, me too. It's amazing, but there's something creepy about them too.
There are. They really are creepy. Mm-hmm. That's all I can really say.
God, yeah. To me, what it does is you understand why the uneducated thought that when a picture was taken, it stole your soul.
Sure. I believe the American Indians thought that too for a while, didn't they? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why there's only I think 4 pictures of Geronimo.
Yeah.
And only 2 pictures of Sitting Bull.
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow pictures to be taken of them. But
so we get to the
stick the landing here. A despondent Wyatt and his family leave Tombstone aboard a train with Ike Clanton and Frank Stillwell close behind. Preparing to ambush them, having been appointed a U.S. Marshal, Wyatt sees that his family leaves safely and then surprises the assassins. He kills Stillwell, but lets Clanton live to carry a message. He has vowed to put an end to the cowboys. Wyatt, Doc, a reformed cowboy named Sherman McMasters, Texas Jack Vermillion, and Turkey Creek Jack Johnson form a posse to seek revenge.
Jeremiah Johnson?
Not Jeremiah Johnson.
Oh,
nope.
I'm sorry.
Jack Johnson.
Wrong podcast. Sorry.
Wrong podcast. Yes. Wyatt and his posse.
I've been waiting for that.
Have you? You've been holding on to that one for a while?
Yeah, I've been
okay.
waiting. Yeah,
okay. Wyatt and his posse are ambushed in a riverside forest by the cowboys. Wyatt walks into a creek, miraculously surviving enemy fire, which is crazy in itself there, and kills Curly Bill along with many of his men. Curly Bill's second in command, Johnny Ringo, which is a cool name in itself, too, if you think about it, right?
It's awesome.
It is. Becomes the new head of the Cowboys. When Doc's health worsens, the group is accommodated by Henry Hooker at his ranch. Ringo lures McMasters into the Cowboys' clutches under the pretense of parley, and then sends a messenger dragging McMaster's corpse to tell Wyatt that he wants a showdown to the end of the hostilities. Wyatt agrees. Wyatt sets off for the showdown, not knowing that Doc has already arrived at the scene. Doc confronts a surprised Ringo, who was expecting Wyatt, and challenges him to a duel to finish their game, which Ringo accepts. Doc and Ringo have already had a couple of standoffs in Tombstone that were ultimately broken up. They then press on to complete their task of eliminating the Cowboys, although Clanton escapes their vengeance by renouncing his red sash. Doc is sent to a sanitarium in Colorado where he dies of his illness. At Doc's urging, Wyatt pursues Josephine to begin a new life. So sad. Sad.
Wyatt doesn't just kill Stillwell. He blows Stillwell away with both barrels of that shotgun. There would have been nothing left of Stillwell. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
And then cut Ike's face with his with his spur to send him a message.
Yes.
Well, and both of these are inaccurate. Stillwell was.
Oh,
Stillwell, they were both there. Ike and Stillwell were both there, and Stillwell they
wet himself.
He didn't get blown in half.
He get blown in half. I guess there's some wetness there, but Wyatt was waiting for them, and as soon as he sees them, they take a running, and Stillwell actually trips and falls, and so Wyatt goes up to him and just blows him away.
Executes him. Yeah,
he
executes him. Yeah,
because depending on who you believe here, the judge told Wyatt previously, because people got freed earlier for things that they shouldn't have done. You don't bring them into court. If you want to take care of something, you do it yourself. And so that's what Wyatt's doing here. He's taking care of things himself. Ike escapes. He hides. That thing with the spur unfortunately doesn't happen.
Yeah, they made Ike kind of a little Weasley character in this movie.
Yeah, that's the
kind of
biggest,
gutless.
That's the biggest change from real life to.
He's always like, "Don't shoot me, don't kill me." Yeah,
and of course, you talk about chewing scenes. Kurt Russell's, "You tell him I'm coming, and hell's coming with me," and then you have the payoff from the beginning of the movie. You have that haze coming up off of the desert floor, and you see the four horsemen of the apocalypse. You see Turkey Creek, Jack Johnson, and you see Texas Vermilion, and you see Doc, and you see Wyatt. It's the four horsemen of the apocalypse, is what the priest was talking about at the wedding feast. Probably the most famous line from Revelations ever. The coolest line from Revelations ever.
Oh wait, isn't there 5 of them?
But you only see 4. But there are 5. McMasters is with them. He's behind one of them. So the first initial shot you see is the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
So in the Bible, there's also a 5th name. It's like the 5th Beatle.
Stewart. Yeah.
No, Eddie Murphy from Saturday Night Live.
Okay. Yeah. It's awesome. And you have this whole montage scene of just murder and just brutality. I mean, they don't hold back. Doc and Texas Jack, they kill those 2 men that were in bed. they didn't even raise their guns. They just shoot everybody that's in that room.
We don't even know who these people are.
Exactly.
These people are nobodies.
Because he says he's going to shoot and kill anybody who has a red sash.
Yeah.
Again, with the red sash, I didn't mention this earlier, but it wasn't a red sash in real life. It was
Boo!
a red rattlesnake hat is what made you a cowboy. The reason for the red sash was back then you had movies that were about color, like Boys in the Hood, and you had Colors with Robert Duvall, and so they purposely made it a red sash because of the color wars.
They were supposed to be Bloods.
Something to that extent, yeah.
All
That's
right,
the reason why they did.
So they weren't from Compton. All right, so we established that the
Compton, Arizona. Yeah,
right. We established that the Cowboys weren't from Compton.
Good to know.
So and they weren't tight with Snoop Dogg. You have that montage of brutality, but then you have what I consider is the deification moment of Wyatt Earp. Doc Holliday reinforces my theory, and it's why I have the theory. Right after what happens in that creek, that's also real. He also went amongst all of that fire and did exactly what is depicted in the movie. And they say that when he opened his coat, there were holes in the back of the coat.
He needed like a bunch of coats, didn't he? Because
it defies all logic. Nobody who was there and testified to what had happened could explain what happened and why Wyatt wasn't killed. Then Turkey Creek asked Doc where Wyatt is, and Doc goes, he's probably somewhere walking on water. There's a moment of peace that happens after you have that montage of brutality. That there's something peaceful about that whole scene. He blows Curly Bill away, but there's something peaceful about it, and this is his deification moment. This is Wyatt Earp becoming Paul Bunyan.
Who was the other guy that he shot at the creek?
I don't even remember.
I'm trying to remember the name. I think it was maybe the Johnny Barnes character, but I could be wrong.
Probably, yeah.
Because in that scene, it looks like he dies right after Curly Bill gets killed, but actually he survived at that moment, and he lives to tell what happened. So that's how that story got out, was that he survived, but he eventually died from the wounds, but he was able to share that story. The montage is great, and I like it, and it shows them as they're on their revenge tour, right?
Called the Earp Revenge Ride.
But actually, in real life, they only killed 4 people. They didn't actually kill.
Well, that's bullshit too. That's why let facts get in the way of a good story.
I know, right? Well, I'm the guy who likes to have the facts and when somebody's talking about
most of the time I do too, except for this movie.
I know.
Except for this movie, because it's great. Because here's one of these crazy things that is real life, but you talk about the intersection of what should be fiction but is real life. The 5 of them end up at Henry Hooker's ranch. Henry Hooker was the man who hired Billy the Kid. This happened just before what is it called? The something county war.
Oh, yeah.
Young Guns.
Right. Young Guns.
Yes.
Here again, it should be fiction, but it's actual reality. How things intersect with each other, and you have this man who is at the intersection of not only Wyatt Earp, but Billy the Kid as well. It's crazy.
So the reason why I bring up the things that really happened is because the things that really happened that are in the movie make it even bigger. I mean, the fact that we see this scene where Wyatt should have been killed, but he ends up killing Curly Bill. And then we talked about earlier about the gunfight over the the corral, not by it wasn't actually there, but
it wasn't actually in the stalls of the corral. Yeah.
It would have been funner if it was in the stalls. That would have been cool. But I mean, it just makes what really happened Because if I'm watching the movie and I saw that scene, I probably would have been like,
that's
"Oh,
bullshit.
come on, that's bullshit." Yeah,
exactly.
That didn't happen. But then to do the research to find out that he actually survived that is incredible. And
there
so
were
that's
holes.
What I bring up.
There were holes in the back of Wyatt Earp's coat, and they don't. There's no explanation.
It's like Pulp
exactly,
Fiction.
exactly. It's Jules from Pulp Fiction.
Right.
That's divine intervention, Vincent. That's divine intervention. You're right. You're completely right, Ken. Because you find out the most outlandish things are actually real. And the whole Henry Hooker thing is just one of those coincidences that shouldn't be real, but it is. And this is the one scene that Ken, you talk about eliminating Josephine from the movie. Them finding out that Billy Zane's character's dead and everything at Henry Hooker's ranch, I could have done without that.
Yeah, because here she is again.
Because, well,
Dun,
right,
dun,
exactly,
dun.
exactly. She pops up again. This is the first of the two most powerful scenes between Doc and Wyatt. Is Doc explaining to Wyatt why he can't beat Johnny Ringo. Because there's still good in Wyatt. And Doc knows that he's not good. And it's
Good enough.
and you understand that. And you're like, this is where Wyatt dies. And it's just so awesome when Johnny Ringo's standing there and he goes, I knew you'd show. And Doc turns around and it's Val Kilmer. And you know at that point Johnny Ringo's toast. And the fact that they're standing like 4 feet apart from each other. And Doc gets the drop on him and shoots him first.
I wish Ringo didn't come off being, scared. I wish Ringo didn't.
Yes,
come
I
off
agree.
in that.
I agree. That's the one change I would have made there.
It would have been better off if he was still that guy. Like earlier when he was drunk and he wanted to, he was ready to take Doc Holliday on right there, and then he's like, "I was just joshing. I was just kidding."
You could say though that this is also a payoff of Johnny Ringo talking about the Faustian bargain and Doc being the devil to come take his soul. Johnny knows the moment that Doc's there, he knows that he can beat Wyatt, but he knows that there's no way in hell he can beat Doc.
Well, it's like the situation with Wyatt and Curly Bill. It was like spur of the moment. That's why Wyatt was able to do what he was able to do because he didn't have to think about it. Now you have Ringo. He knows what he's up against. He knows he could take it. He hasn't thought about what would happen against him and Doc. So
right.
when Doc shows up, it's like he's not prepared. He's prepared to beat somebody he knows he can beat. And that's different from the other two interactions that we see, like back in the Oriental. It was Ringo had the upper hand in the first meeting because he was.
Right.
He had his gun out. He was, Doc was drunk and everything like that. In the second meeting, it's like the reverse.
Right.
So this is like the grudge match almost to a certain extent. But yeah, I just wish they wouldn't have made him like a little bit of a wussy before. I like that idea that it's the payoff where he says, I made the deal with the devil. And he knows now that the devil's come to pay to get what he's owed. Right. I wish they would have given then Val Kilmer a line that kind of would resemble that, right?
Right.
Something that something like here, I'm here to collect or something to that extent.
Yeah, you kind of I am kind of playing a little bit of connect the dots with certain things.
Yeah.
But
maybe I'm your Huckleberry is maybe that is the collection.
I'm your Huckleberry.
I'm here to collect.
I'm here to collect. Yeah.
Yeah. So that could be the line for it.
Yeah, we just keep kind of connecting the dots like that. It's great.
Too bad it didn't happen in real life.
It didn't because they believe Johnny Ringo probably killed himself. And he's actually buried. Yeah, he actually is buried under the tree that they found him at in real life.
Which is cool because you can go see that that site.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these things you can go and check out. It's kind of interesting the history behind everything because if you want to
spend time in Arizona,
road trip to
Tombstone. If you fall off your
Tombstone.
horse, you don't want to deal with rattlesnakes and things of that nature. So he probably did kill himself, unfortunately. But would have been nice to see if that really would have happened.
If you want to spend time in Arizona, that is. But it's hot.
This movie makes me want to go, though. This movie wants me to go to Tombstone.
Tombstone's right very close to the Mexican border.
Yes, it is.
It's that's
the real life cowboys.
Yeah,
they would travel
go back and forth. Yeah,
into Mexico
and steal cattle.
It's right to be cattle rustlers.
Mm-hmm.
That's also why Pancho Villa is looked upon as a demonic figure in the early 19th century by Americans. But he was actually trying to keep the criminals from the United States going into Mexico and stealing things and bringing them back to the United States. But that's a whole nother.
Does that include the West, since we stole it from Mexico? Yeah.
That's a whole podcast in itself. The Mexican-American War. Yeah. Remember the Alamo.
I wish it would end here, though. There's part of me that wishes that it would end here because the rest of it isn't that great.
Right.
You have the little montage where they,
right. Let's finish this.
Throwing his red sash
away.
Which again, Ike, it doesn't do justice for the original
for the real person. He was actually really killed. The way that the narrator says Ike died is the way Ike died.
Yes,
he died as part of probably as some sort of a robbery and was shot and killed. The death of just a horrendous person.
The reason why that he didn't finish off Ike was, well, Wells Fargo was funding all this.
That's a whole podcast in of itself.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole we maybe don't want to go down.
I don't want to get into the whole history, but it all ends up with the end of the South being under reconstruction by the re-election of James Garfield, I believe. Unlike 2020, the actual presidential election ended in controversy, and it actually went to the House of Representatives. And then in a back room, a deal was struck where the guy was named president, and then all of the federal troops were removed from the South, essentially ending Reconstruction and allowing Jim Crow to take over. It's a whole thing, and this is all part of it.
J.P. Morgan and the railroad and everything like that.
All of that's part. And don't think for a second that J.P. Morgan wasn't in that back room, and don't think that John Jacob Astor was not in that back room as well. Because we're talking about all of the heaviest hitters in that cigar-filled room making that deal. I would rather
had them than Josephine popping up every freaking 10 minutes.
You can't get into that. You can't get into that because
a little bit you could.
Now the movie's going to be 3 hours long.
That's okay. That's okay. We can have a 3 hour. This movie's good. The story of all this is fascinating, and some of the things that you left out is a travesty.
Watch the documentary on Netflix. It goes into all of this, and they do a superb job. They don't do a Ken Burns superb job,
right?
But they do a superb job.
They do above average. There's some other documentaries, because there's documentaries every 10 years about this. This, and you could check out things, and there's different point of views that are out there that still think that Wyatt Earp was the bad guy in this situation. So,
I mean, you could easily make that argument, but I like the way that this does end. I love the scene with Doc and Wyatt at the end.
I think it's very heavy-handed.
It probably
Especially since
is.
It never happened.
It probably is, but I like it. But his last words are his last words in real life. Well, I'll be damned, because he looks and he sees that he doesn't have his boots on, because he always said he was going to die with his boots on. That's real. I like their interaction there. I think it's moving. I think Val Kilmer does a better job than Kurt Russell in this particular case. Yeah, it's powerful. And I guess I read that when they were shooting it, Val Kilmer made them put like a tub of ice and like soaked the mattress in this ice water, and then put the ice water bucket underneath it to keep him cold. So his shivers are actually real.
He wanted to feel like what possibly Doc was feeling at that particular time.
Right.
Yeah.
And the priest is giving him last rites,
Mm-hmm.
and as the priest leaves, Doc makes fun of the priest, and I'm getting right with the what does he say? I'm getting right with the Church of Rome, or something like that.
He's talking about he's like he had like a debate or something like that with the priest about and he said something about his hypocrisy has
no
bounds, no ends. Whereas like before it had limits, now it doesn't have any limits, and I like that. I do like that line. It is kind of cool.
It's great.
I think I like when he does die, when they panned out to show that here he's dead, and life is just kind of going around, and nobody's noticed that he's gone.
Right.
And I kind of like that.
Yeah, because he's in a sanatorium. It's kind of nebulous as to exactly how much time has passed, so we don't know exactly. But sanitariums would have been, that's where they would have housed the people who were dying of consumption.
Yeah, I think it was years in between, the end of the...
That's where it kind of loses me a little bit. I wish it would have been... They've been so accurate, or tried to be so accurate with the timeline and everything. Here, they kind of lose it. But I actually like...
With Josephine at this particular time.
Exactly.
And they actually go visit Doc one last time before he dies. In fact, Wyatt and... Doc actually had a falling out for a few years, and then they made up, and that was the last time they saw him. And then it wasn't long after that he died. But and I think things like that. That's why I'm saying it's a little heavy-handed. Then you get to the end where he's like,
I actually like that better than the real life story between him and Josephine. I like the fact that they end up dancing and it's snowing outside. I think there's a sappy part of me that likes that. I do like the narration where the narrator talks about how Wyatt gets involved with Hollywood and everything. And I'll say this, Wyatt Earp was brilliant because he saw the future of the movies. They could turn him into somebody larger than life because he pushed on every single Western movie that was made. Everybody knew who he was. But the other thing that elevated him into the stratosphere of Paul Bunyan and all of the great myths is the dime store novels. Not the Louis L'Amour novels. The dime store novels that my dad would have gotten in the 50s from the local drugstore that told all of these fictional tales of Wyatt Earp and Bat Masterson and Wild Bill Hickok. He was a masterful marketer of himself. And he created a legend, quite literally, that is not real.
Now that you mentioned the novels, the one thing that I'm disappointed in is that Wyatt Earp did not write a book called Doc Holliday, My Friend.
Yes.
They didn't do that. That's another heavy-handed thing that I'm just a little disappointed isn't real.
I like it, though.
My thing is, it's out of order at the end. Josephine, they're dancing and stuff. Their relationship afterwards is a really great relationship. It's a really nice love story. There was actually, before he died, you're talking about novels. There was actually a bad piece written about Holiday. About Wyatt, and to his death. But Josephine afterwards fought that book until her death too. So then of course,
and nobody even knows that book exists anymore,
right? Because of the movies and stuff. He made sure that he hung out with people like John Ford and directors like that in the early days. He knew the right people to hang out with. It didn't benefit him when he was alive, but once he, a couple of years after his death, boom, everything started going in that direction.
He's Paul Bunyan. Growing up, I didn't know who Bat Masterson was.
No.
But I sure as hell knew who Wyatt Earp was. I sure as hell. When you're playing cops and robbers, you're Wyatt Earp because he's larger than life. When in fact, Doc Holliday was 1,000 times cooler. His story is awesome. The fact that Doc Holliday is actually related to Margaret Mitchell,
Gone with the
who
Wind.
wrote Gone with the Wind.
Yep.
And because Doc Holliday was a real Southern aristocrat. So when they talk about, at the beginning of Gone with the Wind, of a time that's gone with the wind, that's Doc Holliday. That's who she's talking about. Because he was that. He was an awesome character.
We've obviously stuck the landing. So why don't we go with our reviews? Let's kick off with Ken, because I'm pretty sure I know what Ted's is.
It's a really good movie. It's one of my favorite Westerns. It's not my favorite Westerns. There's some Westerns out there, John Wayne Westerns, that are just a little bit better than this.
There is no John Wayne Western that is better than Tombstone.
I like Men Who
I'll
Shot
fight-
Liberty Valance.
I'll fight anybody.
You know what?
But anyway.
It's funny. Ted, you made a good point when we were talking about you brought up Snoop Dogg. And I
He
understand.
should be in this movie?
I understand. I understand your hatred now of John Wayne. Because my
because
hatred
you
of
hate
Snoop
Snoop?
Dogg is like
oh, come on
right
now.
up there.
Stop.
Oh no. So
He'll
I'm
stop
kind of
if you stop with John Wayne.
I kind of relate to you now a little bit. Because
Snoop is America's best friend now.
oh, he's a talentless hack. Okay? And I'm being really nice. Unlike Snoop Dogg.
My
I'm being
favorite.
really nice.
Back
Okay,
into
so-
my
All right,
final review.
Yes.
back to Ken's
Yeah.
review.
But I just
Where
want to put that
before
in there.
Ken decided,
I understand
before
now
Ken
your
decided to
your hatred.
disgrace his review by mentioning John Wayne.
And I also love Jimmy Stewart movies. I love Western movies in general. And this is probably the best Western in the last 50 years. I'll put it that way. There are a couple other Westerns that I like a lot, but I think this one is the tops over the last 50 years.
Better than Bad Girls?
The great thing about Bad Girls is you can enjoy that with it muted.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
For
Sorry for those who really do like that movie.
Sorry
Bad
to go
Girls
down
with
that rabbit hole. I'm
Drew
sorry, Ken.
Barrymore and the rest of the.
Go ahead and finish your
the
review. My
ladies there,
apologies.
but That's okay. That's okay. But it's because of the acting. It's not because of the lines in this movie, because some of the lines are kind of silly. You know, when you have Kurt Russell going "no" in the middle of the pond, that's a little bit much. But it's because they are chewing scenery. It's because it looks like they're having a great time making this movie. You feel like even though that heat probably was crazy out there, they're just bringing out the best of themselves. Val Kilmer ends up getting the Batman role because of this role that he does here.
and that's a shame.
That's a shame, right? Well, they didn't give him much to work
But
with. on the
how
Batman
many
movie.
people can say they played Batman? A handful.
He's
Batman
better than George.
and
He's better
Doc
than George
Holliday?
Clooney's
I didn't say he was
Batman.
good. I'm just saying how many people
But
can
he's-
say that?
His Batman is much better than George Clooney's Batman.
That is correct.
And
Fun fact, Val Kilmer, who has played, of course, now Doc Holliday and Batman, also Adam West played Doc Holliday and Batman. Just
but
a
did
little fun fact there.
did Adam West play Jim Morrison?
Oh, come on, it's Adam
No.
West, though, man.
Nobody was the
He played-
mayor
played Adam
Quahog
West,
on
yeah.
Family Guy.
Exactly. But let me finish up this review because this podcast is going a little way too long here. But the acting is great. The cinematography is really good. We haven't really talked about how this is shot. The angles that they are taking here that make you like you're in the middle of everything. They bring you in. I don't think that's Kurt Russell. I think that's direction, and I think that's the camera work, and I think it's done extremely well here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up because I've said a lot about this movie. I mean, yes, it plays with facts and truth. But to be honest with you, the facts and the truths that are out there, they're almost hard to believe a little bit because they're ever changing. I'm going to go with a 4.5 folks on this movie.
Out of 5?
Out of 5.
Wow.
Just because there are some Westerns that I like a little bit more. And because of Josephine. I mean, I hate to say it. I don't even know what happens to Jason Priestley's character.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It's another character that just didn't really belong. There's just a few characters.
He's
that
just there. He's a passing character.
But they try to do something with him.
They
try
did.
to have this relationship between him and the actor, we didn't
Billy
need
Zane,
it.
yeah.
It didn't. And like I said, Josephine just pops up conveniently after every little thing that happened. It just annoys me.
All right, stop ripping on Josephine.
But that's the reason why this is getting a 4.5.
Okay.
It's because it just happens way too much.
So if Josephine wasn't there, you'd give it 5?
Maybe 4.75 or something.
Wow.
Like that.
He's allowed to be.
Takes it down
He's allowed to be
hook.
wrong. It's okay.
So okay. So you mentioned what is it? Who Shot Liberty Valance or whatever that movie is? You give that one
There's
5?
No, I would.
You said you said there are better movies out there, and you threw that one out there.
Here's the thing: I'm a big Jimmy Stewart fan, so there's a lot of Jimmy Stewart westerns that I like.
Yep.
Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is one of them. There's Winchester 73. There's also
Mr. Potter Goes to Tombstone.
Well, you got to understand. If you grow up loving a certain western hero, my favorite actor of all time is Jimmy Stewart. So some of my things are going to be kind of biased a little bit. So,
oh, that's funny.
All right. Well,
yes.
my review. It's I agree with Ken on everything he said. I never even thought of the Josephine character until you brought it up, and now it's hysterical. I can't get it out of my mind. I give this one 4 hooks. It's pretty hard for me to go over 4 on a movie, and there's some things in here that are kind of like, all right, yeah, but everything you said, Ken, and I agree 100%. I'm just not going 4.5 or 4.25. I'm going to go a straight 4. And do we even need to give Ted's review? Because he's probably going 5. Do we?
I mean,
You're going 5, aren't you?
I would go 7 if I could.
Okay, so he's going 5+ on the.
I'll start off by saying I'll go on Ken's vein about his favorite westerns. In my opinion, there's probably only 2 westerns that are better. One being The Wild Bunch, and the other there's a movie that came out in the early 2000s called The Proposition that is absolutely amazing.
Have you seen the 1969 release Charo with Elvis Presley?
No, I have not. I can't believe that I've not, but because
my mom was the shakiest gun in the West.
Oh yeah,
my mom was a huge Elvis Presley fan, so I'm surprised I didn't.
I got a copy of it if you want to borrow it.
No,
okay.
I can say that I've been marked safe from having seen that. I would rather see the female Charo than see that.
The female Charo in 2024.
Charo from any time.
Coochie.
Yeah. I love this movie. There's no 2 ways around it. I love this movie from beginning to end. To me, there's no dips, there's no downs. It's fantastic from beginning to end. It's a movie that I literally will watch probably every 3.5, 4 months, if not more. I've seen his movie so many times I can repeat the lines. The way it's shot is amazing to me too. I love the way they use the heat of the Arizona desert as the rises up, that heat haze that rises up to obscure people. I just absolutely adore that, how they do that. The lines here are amazing. Some of the most quotable lines out there. And like Ken said, well, bye is a meme now that I use. Val Kilmer is superb in this movie. It is a crying shame that the studio didn't get behind him and push him for an Academy Award for this movie. He's the only actor from this movie that deserved any sort of a nomination. Maybe the Academy was soured on him because of his portrayal of Jim Morrison in Oliver Stone's The Doors. I don't know. But he deserved some sort of a nomination for this role. And I've read that across the board. People have said that. It's not just my opinion. I can't recommend this movie more. And Ken said, as far as the last 50 years, it's this and Unforgiven people are going to put up there. Because nobody has seen my movie, The Proposition. It's one of those movies that nobody went and saw. This was the Western done right when so many people did Westerns wrong. It's shockingly how bad some of them were. Yeah, this is a solid 5. I mean, this is a top 25, 30 movie for me. I absolutely love it.
He loves it, everybody. Hey, Mikey.
I love it.
He loves it. Okay, well, let's end on that positive note of we all like the movie, clearly. So it is obviously probably one of the best Westerns of all time. I don't think we can argue that.
But it's not a best Western.
It's not a best Western or a Hyatt or a Hilton, but it's a wonderful Western. Yes.
I've
Ken?
been waiting for that one,
I
too.
know you've been holding that one for a while.
I love it.
Ken, what are we doing next?
Hey, we're going to go back to our Robert Redford movie. We haven't done one of those in a while, so we're going to do The Natural.
We're not going to do Jeremiah Johnson again?
We could do Jeremiah Johnson again, sure.
The sequel.
The sequel.
Rambo.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Johnson is Rambo.
You might as well bring all the other X-Men in there too. So, yeah, we're going to be doing The Natural as it's celebrating its 40th anniversary this year.
Man, the oldest rookie.
40.
It's a great movie too. We're
It's
looking
an
forward to
amazing
watching
movie.
that one. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of Hooked on Movies podcast. I want to thank everyone for listening. And as always, Ted, never apologize. It's a sign of weakness.
Well, bye.
See you next time on Hooked on Movies.